Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Futures in Digital Learning podcast. I am Adam Davey, Instructional Design Manager with UCAT at the University of Arizona. Once again, joined by my co-host, Brian Hale. Hey,
Hey,
Brian.
everybody.
And we are delighted to be joined today by Nicole Messier, Associate Director of Instructional Design at the University of Illinois, Chicago. So welcome, Nicole.
Thanks for having me today.
Awesome. And thank you for joining us. And today we are going to talk about equitable grading and rubrics, everybody's most excited topic here today. But something that it's funny. Nicole was recommended to me by another podcast guest from a few episodes ago, Maxine Frendel. And it was very timely because I had just been having conversations about rubrics and changing upgrading schemes and whatnot. So I thought this was a great, fortunate timing to have Nicole come and join us. So thank you for that, Nicole. So to start, just real quick, what do we mean when we say equitable grading, and how does that differ from traditional grading?
I think there's a lot of interpretations when it comes to equity. And so I always compare kind of thinking about equality versus equity. And so the idea of giving everyone the exact same thing versus giving students what they need and meeting
Okay.
students where they are. And so when we think about equitable grading, really thinking about who students are, what their learned experiences are, and also thinking about grading what you're actually teaching them and not evaluating assumptions based upon what they should or shouldn't have coming into your course or your classroom.
Oh.
So when we think about like traditional grading, you were, I'll age myself here. Back in the 90s, when you submitted, a paper to your college professor, you didn't know what it was going to be graded on.
Right.
You just handed it in and you got it marked back. And if you did what you thought was supposed to happen, you got a
Yeah.
good grade. And if you didn't, and so grading a lot of time was very transactional, in the past, where you exhibited certain behaviors, you picked up on the cues that the faculty member had, and you were able to do whatever that behavior was to get
Mhm.
that grade. And so when we think about moving from traditional grading to more equitable grading, really thinking about what we're teaching, what our goals are. So I always, talk to faculty about what were your goals for the course? How does that connect to your grading? And when I think of grading, I think of scoring. So how we
Mhm.
assign a grade, but I
Yeah.
also think about the feedback part of it. And so a lot of times people say grading and feedback, but I kind of think of grading as both of those together, and try to frame those together as well.
Okay. Yeah, what you described is what I used to call dartboard grading, when you would hand in a paper and you'd get it back with just a number on it and like
Yeah.
nothing else, and you'd be like, why that number? um, uh, and
Yeah.
it just yeah. So I like the idea of putting things together. So how do rubrics come into play with this, and what does what does that look like to promote equity?
Sure. I mean, I think
Mhm.
going back to the learning objectives,
Mhm.
and what your goals are for the course. And so a lot of times when I talk to faculty and work with them to develop rubrics for the course, we try to align what they want to give feedback on based upon their course goals and learning objectives,
Mhm.
so that what they're teaching is what they're evaluating and giving feedback on.
Right.
And then also thinking about that transparency in teaching. So, the tilt method, where if we're going to evaluate something,
Mhm.
we want to be able to communicate that to students. So, whether it is as simple as saying, hey, these are the things that I'm looking for in this assignment,
Right.
or if it gets more complicated and we're going to build out an analytic rubric, or, a single point rubric, or a checklist. I create this kind of like checklist slash rubric, with faculty sometimes. So
Okay.
again, just letting students know what they're being evaluated on, what the expectations are.
Mhm.
And I think rubrics can be a great tool for that. And it can help to start to demystify what is grading and what is the
Yeah.
expectation there. and can really help faculty think about what feedback. I always kind of frame rubrics as a feedback tool first.
Okay.
So, like, what feedback do you want to give students that you can give all students? And then you can add that. And then if we get to that clickable rubric part that they build into the LMS,
Yeah.
and you can also give that very specific and personalized feedback, which then really leads to that equitable grading, because you're meeting each student where they need, giving them that targeted and actionable feedback
Okay.
as well.
Okay, so I'm curious about this process working with faculty in building
Mhm.
rubrics. So you talk to them about their learning objectives. Talk to them about, like, what feedback do you want to give to students. What comes next when you help a faculty build a rubric for an assignment?
So we look at, I mean, we look at the whole course. So
Okay.
in my department, we work and design online asynchronous courses. We also work with faculty for on-campus courses. And so when we're doing a course development, we utilize backwards design or understanding by design by Wiggins and McTeague. So
Mhm.
we start with our learning objectives and then we design all the assessments in the course with the faculty member. And so we're kind of
Mhm.
looking at the whole picture
Okay.
and really focusing on where are the assessments that need more feedback that
Mhm.
students either struggle with, or that if it is, for example, a large enrollment course where they might have graduate assistance grading,
Mhm.
we want to have a more built out rubric. So we might recommend an analytic rubric that has multiple performance levels
Okay.
so that there's consistency in scoring if they want to award partial points or all or nothing. So we kind of talk through who they are.
Okay.
We talk a little bit about equity and see where they're at on that spectrum,
Mhm.
and where their comfort level is with giving feedback. We look at class sizes, all of those sorts of things. Um, because we want the course and we want the grading to be sustainable long term.
Right.
So to grow a program, and start grading and you've only got 10 papers or 10 projects, and then we end up with, 25. What does that look like?
Right.
So we have a lot of conversations about it. And then based upon that, we really look with the faculty member and talk about the instructions and what are the pieces and the components of the project or the assignment, and where can we give feedback and really help grow students. And I always frame rubric development as feedback mechanism first.
Yeah.
And I think that really helps them to think about the language that they use as well when developing rubrics.
Okay.
But yeah, we do, like I said, we do kind of, if you're familiar with specification grading, kind of a met or not met
Mhm.
rubric. So we describe the grading criteria, and so if faculty allow for multiple attempts, we might build something that's more like a checklist
Okay.
in the LMS. But if we've got something that they want to award partial points, they're only submitting it once, they
Mhm.
want to give more performance levels and feedback, then we'll develop more of an analytic rubric with, 3 to 5 performance levels, um, kind
Okay.
of deal.
Okay. Um, that's very cool. As you're talking, I'm thinking about rubrics that I'm working on currently with a course development I'm doing, and this
Mm.
idea of a checklist rubric is something that they want to do, but it doesn't quite work in our LMS. We use Brightspace, and it's not very convenient for that. So
So we used to use Blackboard and we're just migrating to Canvas now.
okay.
So I like Canvas because in Blackboard, every grading criteria has to have the same number of levels of performance.
Oh.
In Canvas, you can have different. So you
Hmm.
can have 2 levels, you can have 3 for certain grading criteria, you
Yeah.
can have 4. So that's been really wonderful.
Yeah.
But yeah, the workaround there is really you put the description in the title of the grading criterion,
Hmm.
and then the other columns are either met or not met
Okay.
in the description.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of the workaround for a checklist.
Okay, thank you for that tip. That's
Yeah, no
helpful
problem.
right now. I
Yeah, no
like it.
problem. Yeah,
So
I like to push the boundaries of what our LMS systems will allow us to do.
yeah, yeah, that's always
Yeah.
fun. You know, push it until you break it, and then
Right?
and then say like,
Yeah.
why does it not do this? Can you
Yeah.
fix it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Awesome.
Technology should work for us.
Exactly. Exactly. So
So, what you just said, it should work for us. I want to examine the student point of view for a second.
Mhm.
As a student going into a course, how can I tell that my instructor is going to be grading my work equitably versus just standard check the boxes? Is there a way for a student to see that?
I mean, I think there is. I mean, I think it's part of the way the course is set up from the syllabus to the way that the grading scale is created or the points distribution, acknowledging that students have lives outside of school and
yeah.
that sometimes we just have a bad week and we submit something, awful. So things like having, lowest scores dropped on quizzes, having one free pass, having flexibility with due dates. Those are all signs of equitable grading, as well as, a clear message as far as when I'm going to get feedback. Like one of the things that we see a lot is, I love this course, but I wish I could get my feedback sooner so that I could apply it to my next
Yeah.
assignment. And so, what does that turnaround look like? And so, being mindful of that. Again, going back to that rubric development, where do we need to really target feedback so that students can apply it?
Mhm.
And where can we give just some general guidelines for students where for those low stakes formative practice that don't necessarily need to have detailed feedback?
Right.
And so thinking about the different levels of feedback that we can give um, is also really important.
Do you
Uh,
find that rubrics allow instructors to give more timely feedback because it's maybe a little bit more efficient for them to grade and give that feedback?
um, I think the faculty that embrace the LMS and the tools that are available, yes, I
Okay,
do think that it
that's
works
fair.
for them. I think in the long run, what a
Mhm.
rubric attached to assignment does is at least it gives clarity to the students.
Mhm.
And I think that's important. But I would say we don't utilize all the tools that are available as much as we could.
Mhm.
But yes, I do think that being able to click a box for a performance level and then being able to add in specific criterion
Yeah.
has been very effective for our students. So I do see success for the faculty that engage with the tool and
Mhm.
use the other components. So both in Blackboard and Canvas, they had social annotation tools. Some faculty like to give um, video or audio feedback as well. Those are all available in the LMS as well. So,
Very cool. I want to go back a little bit to what you were saying about, you know, building in equity through the syllabus and through certain
mhm,
policies, things like that. You talked about, free pass,
mhm.
flexible due dates, things like that. What are some suggestions that you have along those lines that you give to faculty to build that into their courses?
Sure. Well, if they're going to do weighted categories in a course,
Hmm.
um, thinking about again, if you've got a lot of formative practice, allowing that weighted category to have one of the lowest score dropped is just a very simple one. There's
Yeah.
very low maintenance. It can be set
Right.
up. Um, a more complicated one that I've done in the past is a token system where students get a set number of tokens.
Mhm.
The faculty determines what those tokens are for, and they can use them for a reattempt, an extension. Again, depends on what the faculty wants to open up that flexibility for their course. And so they submit that token, and then they let the faculty member know what it's being submitted for. I've done it
Okay.
10 years ago. I did it in a Google form
Hmm.
outside of the LMS, but now we've done it, in just a survey tool. And so
Okay.
they just submit the survey. The faculty gets that notification in the grade center that it's been submitted. And so they can go in and make that adjustment.
Right.
Uh, and that has shown to be a great improver of student satisfaction scores for faculty because
Okay.
there's a lot of things that happen. There's less anxiety about the course because
Hmm.
I have this free pass, even if it's just one token.
Yeah.
But also I don't have to beg for that
Hmm.
whatever extension. I
Yeah.
don't have to divulge personal information.
Hmm.
It's just given to everyone.
Hmm.
And I've actually worked with faculty that also give more tokens based
Yeah.
upon engagement in the discussion. So the more that you engage in the discussions, or the more that you do something else in the course, you can earn more tokens for different things.
Okay.
Um, and so,
That sounds
yeah,
fun.
Yeah,
A little
that's a nice way to do it.
gamifying
it
your
is.
course in a way.
It
Yeah.
it is. It is.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are just some simple suggestions.
Yeah.
Again, I think really thinking about what you're going to grade and how you're going to grade, and looking at due dates. So a lot of times, if we're working on a program that is for adult learners that
Hmm.
are not necessarily attending college full time, but maybe they're working, they're balancing
Yeah.
life, looking at due dates as well. And so that we're not penalizing students for turning things in late because they need the whole weekend to work on
Right.
it. And so looking at those late and due date, fines and so forth as
Yeah.
well.
I have been, you know, a crusader against the midnight due date for a long time now, because I feel like I'm not going to grade your work at 1 a.m.
Yeah.
If you want to work in the middle of the night and turn it in, why should I mark that late? Like
Hmm.
I need to set a time that is like gonna be right before I'm gonna start grading it,
Yeah.
so that you have as much time as possible to get that turned in. Uh,
That's
but
not what class are you teaching? I want to
yeah,
be in that
right,
class.
yeah. So I've also found that, like what you were saying with the kind of the token system or the free passes, I've started doing something similar in my classes as well, and I feel like I've actually gotten more work turned in than before I started doing that.
Hmm.
Because students, before, if they knew it was going to be late and it was going to be marked down, or not counted at all, they just weren't doing it at all.
Yeah.
And now they know they have this, they can get an extension, so they're more likely to do it if they have a little bit of extra time. And so I'm getting more work turned in, and
Hmm.
it's been great. It's been a really great case study in that. So I try to recommend that to instructors that I work with as well.
Yeah. Or even just having a flexible due date. So,
Mm-hmm.
like, you have, the first half of the semester, you have until the midterm to turn things in without a penalty.
Right.
Or,
Oh,
there's been a lot of research, even in high enrollment courses, that
yeah.
when you have flexible due dates, only about 25% of your students will actually take you up on those flexible due
Right.
dates, but just knowing that they're there
Mhm.
reduces the anxiety and
Yeah.
allows students to produce better.
Yeah.
Um,
For sure. That's awesome. I think
Yeah.
that's really great. So,
So, talking about anxiety, I know some students have an anxiety working in groups
mhm.
because people are in different time zones and different cities and things. How would you apply equitable grading to a group scenario?
Yeah. Actually, I'm doing a course right now that has collaborative work in it. And it's very low stakes work, first of all. I think I think once you do a group assignment and it has a high stakes value, what you end up with an assembly line production. Like, okay, I'm gonna do this part, you do that part, I do this part. And there's actually really no collaboration. It's just like,
yeah.
all right, I'm gonna put slides 1 through 5 together,
Hmm.
and instead, when you make it low stakes and it's more about the conversations, then you actually produce better collaboration and communication between groups. And it's less about the final product and more about the process. So,
Okay.
in those cases, what we typically do is we have certain activities that are required, but they're not graded. So if someone goes, that's okay. They're not going to get anything out of those conversations. The other individuals will. And so we
Okay.
build in a mechanism where they can self-report what they got out of the group collaboration. And then there is some sort of final deliverable that kind of synthesizes their discussions, their agreements, all of those pieces. And it's less about this final deliverable and more about the process. and what they've learned from that process.
And then what would you say to the student that writes that one email that says, I feel like I've been doing the majority of the work and none of the other group members are pulling their own weight because of this equitable grading?
And I guess for me, I would say, well, you're getting the most out of this. So you're getting the most learning out of this versus the other students that are leaving this course with a deficit. And so I think for me, I would think about framing the activities, whether it's something uncomfortable like group work or a project, really thinking about it as growth mindset in the delivery of the why behind that assignment. And if we're grading it, why we're grading it or what we're giving feedback on. But really thinking about connecting it to career, connecting it to, their future field of study and so forth. I think that really helps to ground students in the activity. And really that metacognitive piece is really important as well.
Nice.
Excellent. I like that metacognitive. That should be one of our keywords, Brian.
Okay.
Metacognitive. Get that out. Yeah. Because I think that's important too. With a reflective piece as well. So how do you see reflection kind of built into or working in with this idea of equity and metacognition and student growth?
Yeah, so we do a lot. I mean, going back to rubrics and grading and those pieces, we try to encourage faculty to enable peer review with the rubrics, enable self-evaluation with the rubrics, and then kind of having them reflect. The typical model was always, hey, I submit this assignment, I get feedback from the instructor, and then at some point I have to put all these pieces together and I'm supposed to show how I implemented all this feedback into that final project. That assessment that we've been designing for decades and decades. Right. And it's really hard to show growth sometimes or changes, or is it really meaningful to like rephrase one thing and is that enough, to show growth? And so I feel like the last decade, we've been trying to create that buy-in when it's really thinking about what feedback helped me grow from the instructor, what feedback helped me grow from my peers, what did I learn from these experiences, what did I learn from self-evaluating my own work, and asking students to really report that out, and also in the front side of the course, kind of asking them to report out, what are your goals for this course? And so really thinking about that forward-facing piece of, and being okay with what the students' goals are as well. Right. So like, hey, I'm just trying to get credit for this course.
Right.
Like, or I need an A because this is foundational information and I'm going into engineering and this is Calc 3 and I need to know all this stuff, or, whatever the case might be. And I think equity in grading also encompasses the fact that we have to be okay with students having different goals than what we are. Not all students want or need to put in the effort for an A.
Right.
And we also have to be okay with that and support the students who want to learn, but have other priorities.
Yeah.
And I think designing for equity means recognizing that as well.
And I love that idea of kind of understanding the student perspective and their own goals and realizing that, they're not every student is the same in your course. And I think with that comes, this idea of student choice and options and flexibility as far as what those assignments look like and what type of work they're producing. So I'm curious to know, what types of things have you built or you worked on in courses where students have a choice, or maybe they can submit a written work or a video or a website, something like that, and what does that look like in terms of equity, in terms of feedback, grading? Because we always get a lot of pushback when we try that with instructors. They're like, how am I supposed to grade all these different types of assignments that
I don't
students
know
turn
all this
in?
different software.
Right.
I don't have time to learn all this different software.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this goes back to the very beginning of our conversation when we
Hmm.
think about what we should be grading. And
Yeah.
again, it goes back to what we're teaching in that course.
Hmm.
And so if you're only evaluating their their knowledge retention, their synthesis of
Hmm.
information that you've taught them, there's the skills that you've taught them, then that could be disseminated and submitted in an assignment in any format.
Right.
Um, what ends up happening is we end up teaching this subject,
Hmm.
right now I'm designing a course on digital advocacy. So digital
Okay.
advocacy, right? But I'm going to grade grammar. I'm not teaching them grammar. I'm
Right.
not teaching them spelling. But we get hung up on these other things. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't ever give feedback on other things that we're not
Yeah.
teaching, but should we be grading it? If we didn't teach them these things, should we be grading it? And so I guess that would be my pushback when it comes to authentic assessments with faculty.
Hmm.
Um, and we don't have to know the technology. And I have never found a faculty member that switched to authentic projects and was like, oh, I hate this variety. I would rather just read 45 papers.
Right.
Like no one ever says that. Like faculty are like, this is great. I'm getting like really creative work. I
Hmm.
had a faculty member that allows almost any format for this one assignment and got an infographics, got a
Yeah.
website, got audio recordings. Someone made a comic. Um,
That's so
and
cool.
so, yeah, it's a disabilities 101 course.
Yeah.
And so I think allowing that choice
Hmm.
and not structuring the assessment so much actually is a relief to a lot of the faculty members once they're in it and
Hmm.
they feel it
Yeah.
because the ownership shifts. It's
Yeah.
no longer about the instructor owning that assignment, it's about the students owning it.
Yeah.
um, and so yes, and I wrote a teaching guide a long time ago about rubrics, and I
Okay.
do have an example of authentic assessment and some template language and so forth. So I always share those with faculty.
Okay.
Um, and so it's not about the delivery method. It's just
Hmm.
about the content.
Hmm.
Did they disseminate the information? Did they follow the prompts that you provided them? And they can disseminate it however they wanted to,
Right.
and in that delivery method that they chose.
Yeah. And then you're not concerned as much with those the technical things of like, oh, did they write enough pages?
It's not in
Did
the right
they?
APA
Yeah, is
format.
it right? All
Yes,
those little things where you can just
it's
focus
steal the
on,
joy.
yeah, the content and what they're actually getting out of it. Um, so I love that. I think as a student I would have enjoyed that a lot more.
Yeah.
And I remember the teachers that gave me that freedom to,
Hmm.
Hmm.
you know, do what I wanted, right? Not necessarily like what I wanted, but you know what I mean? Like it's, a little bit of freedom to kind of explore and be creative. And
Yeah.
I think that's fun. So,
Yeah, it's exciting.
yeah. So what what advice would you have for instructors who they're looking at their course and maybe you know they're doing things the traditional way, right? And
Hmm.
they are like, well, I don't want to overhaul my whole course. Like that's a lot of work. I don't have time for that. What are some small things that I can do to start? I know we've talked about a lot of things, but
Hmm.
where would you start with instructors who are like, I know I need to change, but I can't change everything at once. I can only do a little bit.
Yeah, I would say, some quick wins, some small things, depending on where they're at with their
Hmm.
assessments. Supporting executive functioning in an
Hmm.
assignment. So
Okay.
not having, I think back to like freshman year of college and, like these giant paragraphs of information that you're like sorting through and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, did I get everything that I need in this assignment?
Yeah.
And so thinking about headings and subheadings and bulleted lists,
Okay.
and just breaking up the assignment. If they don't have any grading criteria, at least listing in a bulleted list, like here are the things that I'm looking for in this assignment.
Okay.
And just starting with that conversation.
Okay.
Um, if they are a faculty member that's using some form of rubric,
Mhm.
then I usually look at the rubric and I will make suggestions as far as supporting a student's self-efficacy.
Mhm.
So we want to ensure that the rubric, we're giving them feedback that's going to help them grow and not
Mhm.
shut down or feel judged. And language can really impact students' experience in a course.
Mhm.
So just small changes when we think about words like weak or poor
Okay.
or lax. There's a judgment with some of those words. And so, how can we describe what something is weak in this situation? Or what is
Okay.
it missing?
Yeah.
And so, just small changes in language can really help support student self efficacy. And so, that's something I would work with the faculty member with if it was just a small, quick change.
Okay.
Um, yeah, headings, communicating grading criteria,
Yeah.
and thinking about the language that you use.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that idea of the
Yeah.
language you're using
Mhm.
in the rubric
Yeah.
because some of them are set up as
Yeah.
excellent, meets expectations. You need to take the previous course in this
Yeah.
and just go back completely. Get out of my class.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
what would you say are too many items in a rubric? Like, what's a good rubric size, just in general?
I mean, I have my favorites. Is that too nerdy or
No,
what?
go for
No,
it.
we love people who are nerdy on this podcast. This is great.
So my favorite performance levels would be three
Okay.
in a rubric, in an analytic rubric or a holistic rubric, whatever. And the reasoning for that is because, and this again might be a little bit of a different conversation, but the difference between an A and a B work, I find that very subjective. So
Mhm.
for me, um, if you meet the criterion, you should get an A.
Okay.
I think B is kind of like, I don't know. I feel like it's kind of insulting. In a little bit. In another way, it's very subjective. What is
Mm.
B work? I think
Yeah.
a lot of times we think of A work as exceptional,
Mhm.
excellent. And the reality is we only have, depending on the course, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 16 weeks, depending on whether your quarters or terms or so forth. Can a student be excellent at the end of that time period? Is that really
Mhm.
fair?
Yeah.
So yeah, my favorite is three. So you have an AB level, and I work with faculty that prefer a range, so we make it an AB range.
Okay.
We have the C level. We did it. We just maybe don't have as much details. There's
Mhm.
some transition issues, organization of thought,
Yeah.
maybe, but they did the work.
Mhm.
And then there's that kind of D to F range where either they didn't attempt at all, they just skipped that whole part, or they attempted it, and acknowledging that they did attempt it,
Mhm.
um, but they're not there yet. Like there needs to be more work put into it.
Yeah.
And so that would probably be my recommendation. Some faculty like to have four. For faculty that like to allow for resubmission, then we
Mhm.
always have like a resubmit column. And so that criterion will say like, you did not meet this criterion, please resubmit,
Okay.
and see my feedback. And I think that's a really equitable way to add another performance level.
Okay.
Um, I also like a single point rubric. So where you just describe the meets in the clickable rubric
Mhm.
and the not met or exceeds, you give personalized feedback for. That works really well for project-based courses, small enrollment courses, more discussion-based
Mhm.
courses, things like that. Um, yeah, those are probably my favorites.
I like that. I want to go back to something you were talking about as far as language that you're putting out there for students
Mhm.
and the grading criteria and being transparent, things like that. How do you suggest to faculty that they lay out their grading criteria? Do you just have it all in an attached syllabus and students have to find it? Do you break that out in the LMS as far as separate pages to make it easier for students? Or what recommendations do you have?
Yeah, it depends on the course and the
Mhm.
faculty member. So we always have a heading that says grading criteria and feedback.
Mhm.
And then depending on where we go with the course
Mhm.
and what that specific assignment is. So it may say something like, um, this assignment will be based upon completion and correctness, because
Mhm.
if it's a math course, it has to be complete and they have to show all their work and it has to be
Right.
correct answers. So there's those things. If it is a clickable rubric that we've built, then it will say, please view the rubric for more details.
Mhm.
But we always build that into every assignment, so there's consistency for student experience within a program.
Okay.
And they know that no matter what the grading is, and if the grading is different, from different instructors, they're going to have that call out, and that recognition of where to find that grading
Okay.
criteria in the assignment itself.
Oh, okay. So in the assignment themselves, you
Yeah.
link to that somewhere. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. That's
Yes,
cool.
because we do use other integrations. So, like, a lot of our math courses and STEM courses use Gradescope.
Hmm.
And so the faculty prefer to grade in Gradescope, but we have that message to let them know, like,
Okay.
here's what the rubric in Gradescope is going to say. It's going to tell you that, your work
Okay.
had to be complete or at correctness.
Hmm.
And so we'll have that messaging in the assignment.
Okay. Okay. All right. Very cool. Um, and so you talked about your favorites with the rubrics. What are some other favorite things that you like to do? Like in your ideal course that you would design,
Mhm.
what what would that look like?
Um, high interactivity.
Okay.
Actually, the course that I'm designing right now has a lot of different things happening in different ways for students to demonstrate their knowledge. So we've got discussions, we've got social annotation going on,
Oh, okay.
we have a collaborative kind of project, and then we have an individual project.
Okay.
And so I think having that variety, to meet different needs of students,
Hmm.
is really important.
Yeah.
And then there's not a lot of weight to any of them. They're all like important.
Right.
So there's nothing that feels like, oh my gosh, this is my half of my grade.
Yeah.
So that's something I always do talk about with faculty. That is also a very small change that you can make,
Hmm.
is looking at like, oh, I see that this assignment is worth 40 or 80 or 60% of the course. Have you
Yeah.
ever considered, and that can be a
Hmm.
very small change. It may take some conversations, but that
Right.
can be a very small change that can happen very quickly to help support student success in a course as well.
Yeah. Um, yeah. No, that's we have those conversations a lot too. Like,
Yes.
let's get away from the one midterm, one final, and nothing else in your course.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I
Um,
think the
yeah.
more that we can offer variety is
Hmm.
important for students, because we
Yeah.
do have the students that, don't want to necessarily engage in certain things.
Hmm.
And we're never going to make everyone happy. Like, that's
Right.
just not going to happen.
Right.
And the reality is, and what I always tell faculty with like group work, going back to group work or discussions or social annotation, anything where people have to interact,
Hmm.
um, we don't work in an environment where we never talk to anyone. So
Right.
these are skills that we need.
Yeah.
There are very few careers where you can literally never speak to anyone ever,
Yeah.
not have to collaborate. I'm sure someone will post one on this podcast, but you know what I mean? So
Right.
at some point, we want to help support those skills.
Hmm.
And so if we do it in ways that are less intimidating, that are more equitable,
Yeah.
where they are not as weighted as heavy,
Hmm.
um, I think that's really important too.
Yeah. Yeah. And ways that they feel, that it's low stakes in a way, right? Where it's
Yes.
not, like you said, it's not weighted so heavily in their grade, but it's something where you're building these other skills, not just the content knowledge,
Mhm.
um,
And
for
it can't be
students.
busy work. Your low
Right.
stakes stuff can't
Can't be
ever be
beat.
busy work
Yeah.
because students see that.
Yeah. They
Yes.
don't
And
like that.
they're either not going to do it and they'll say, well, it's only worth 5 points.
Yeah.
I'll make that up somewhere else.
Right.
So
Hmm.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah, and then that's why I'm also an advocate for not grading things and just making them a requirement as part of their learning process too. So,
okay.
think, getting faculty to think about ungrading, or alternative grading
Yeah.
as
That's
well.
well. That's a topic for another
Yeah.
podcast. So we might
Yeah,
have to have
sorry.
have you back to talk about ungrading and alternative grading, because that I know that's a fun one. We have a few people on our team that have played with that,
Yeah.
with
Mhm.
some courses they built as well. So
Yeah.
but um, well, I just want to thank you again for coming on and talking about this. This is a fun conversation, and I think I personally have learned a lot just chatting with you, and am already thinking about ways that I can approach conversations with faculty a little bit differently, and think about how we can design courses with more equity in mind. So, thank you very much for you know broadening our vision and for chatting with us today.
Well, thank you for having me today. Love talking about rubrics and assessments and grading. So I think there's a
Awesome.
lot that we can do to help meet students where they're at.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of faculty that really want to innovate and want to be more equitable. And if we can find a pathway that works for them, and that's all we're trying to do as instructional designers is meet. I always say we advocate for student success, but we also advocate for faculty success.
Yeah.
And so, really thinking about instructor success. And I think there's lots of things that we can implement to help both.
Yeah. I agree. And I think that's wonderful. And am so grateful that we had this conversation so we can start to bring that conversation here to, to us at the University of Arizona and to others who are listening as well that maybe want to have that conversation at their institution. So, yeah. Any final thoughts, Brian?
Many
Many
final
final
thoughts.
thoughts.
Yeah. I'm now better armed to have some conversations with my instructors that push back a little more than maybe I would like them to,
Right,
because
right.
they don't have time, they don't have the knowledge, they don't have.
Yeah.
What equitable grading, it's an easy thing. You just look at the previous history of your course and the students that were in that course and examine what would you have needed to do to make it equitable grading the last time you did the course.
Right.
What would you need to do going forward to put in a couple of rubrics, or so it's not hard.
Yeah.
It's not hard. You just have to be creative about it and make sure, like you were saying, that it's going to work for you, the instructor, and it's going to work for the students. And if it doesn't work the first time, that's okay.
It's okay. Yeah.
Iterate it, make it work the second time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Innovation takes iteration. Yes.
Yep.
Most
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. I think that's
And
a
that can
hard
be
thing.
that can be intimidating. It can be intimidating, but they have you and they have us, and that's what we're here for, to be that partner.
That's right.
To help them innovate and to make those small changes. Maxine and I used to say, like when we would do a workshop with faculty or so forth, like, what's one quick win? What's one thing that you can take away from this that you can implement today? And I think that kind of helps faculty not think about all of these things that they need to change, but just one thing that they can implement right away to make a difference.
I love that. And for anybody listening, we're going to leave you with that. Think about as you've listened to this podcast episode, go back, think about what's one thing that you can go and change right now in your course to make it more equitable, and then come back and listen to our next episode and change one more thing.
Yeah, and then you'll be ready for the fall.
Yeah. So excellent. Once again, Nicole, thank you very much for joining us. This has been a pleasure. And for those listening, thank you for listening, and we hope you tune in to future episodes as well. Thank you very much.
The Futures of Digital Learning podcast is a production of the University of Arizona University Center for Assessment, Teaching, and Technology. If you have any questions, comments, or ideas you'd like to share with our office, go to the Contact Us link on our website, ucatt.arizona.edu.